What's up, guys, and welcome back to the ATN Podcast, and welcome to our new YouTube studio. So we've been building this over the last few months. We've got a new little studio, and as you can see behind me, we've got this new amazing feature wall. And this wall, we've been working with an artist called Zagalono, who I'll put in the link below, his Instagram account and their work, which is really what you see behind me, this incredible graphics that he has of many different architects. So we're not only featuring big in our background anymore, we have many different architects you can see in the background. Hopefully you can see some projects. Some of these projects I've actually worked on at various different firms, which is pretty cool. So a huge shout out to Zagalono. So check him out in the description below and some of his work. And thank you for this collaboration. Today on the podcast, though, we're going to be continuing our discussion around the business side of architecture. This is really a theme that I really want to promote here on ATN. And today we've got Tyler Suomala, who is an architect, and he's also the founder of Growthitect, which is a platform that works with architects to improve their sales and marketing when they're growing their own architecture practice to actually bring in clients. So we're going to be talking to him about all of the kind of strategies that architects should adopt to actually go and find your first clients if you're starting off your own practice. This is something I've also had experience with, and I went down the same mistakes as many other architects of just doing a bunch of competitions, publish them, and just hope that the clients roll in. Whereas in reality, the strategy is very different. So we're going to be covering all of this in the podcast, talking about how you can actually go and use these strategies to find yourselves clients. This is a topic I really want to share with you guys. I think more and more we need to talk about the business side of architecture and how we can make our businesses more successful. As always, though, if you like this episode, give us a like and a subscribe. The bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests become. And we've got our 60th podcast coming up. At the end of this, I'll announce who is going to be joining us. But as always, thank you for the support, and we'll continue to get bigger guests on. But without any further ado, let's jump into it and have a chat with Tyler. This video is brought to you by ArchiTech Network and our online platform of courses where you can learn from world-class architects working in some of the practices that you can see in these videos. You can learn Grasshopper, Revit, Rhino Inside, Twinmotion, and some of our new courses on AI, and lots more courses that we're delivering over the next year. So please, if you like this video, check out our courses in the link below so we can keep bringing you more content like this. All right, Tyler, that's it. We're live. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ali.
Yeah, like I was just, we were just chatting away. I think it's a really nice time to have you on. We're on this theme of startups, the business side of architecture. We've had a VC on, we've had some startup companies on. I've been following you a little bit online for a while now. After you've been working with Alex and his new studio Bucky. Is it Studio Bucky, right?
Yeah, Studio Bucky, yeah.
And I saw a couple of your posts recently. I thought it was like a great time to get you on to talk about the business of architecture. I know you kind of focus on the sales and marketing side as well, but I think we can delve into that. I always give people just a little bullet point introduction, because I think you've got an interesting background, as many of our guests do, where you've kind of got this mixed background, right? You've been an architect for 10 plus years. You've worked in architecture practice. You worked in SOM for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
You've kind of been teaching. You've set up your own practice. You even worked in you transitioned to sales in a startup, right? And now you're on your own in your own startup, right? And I also have to give you congrats. I saw a post that you're now on it full time. I think, does that sum up a little bit of where you are now?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's a perfect bulletproof bullet point summary. Summary. I'm on day 2 of being full time into my own business, so this is perfect timing for me too.
That's exciting. That's a real big milestone. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
Maybe to start off, give the audience a little bit of an idea of what is your business and what do you do. And you started the Growthitect, if I pronounced that correctly. Give us a little bit overview of what you do.
Yeah, I consider Growthitect to be a media company that's specifically focused on sharing proven sales and marketing strategies with architects and with architecture firm owners. There's a few different, revenue levers inside of Growthitect. One is just finding great companies to partner with that want to get in front of the audience. And then the other one is I have a private membership for architecture firm owners that has, all of the sales and marketing strategies that I've ever put together, along with playbooks and live sessions and just kind of more peer support to help you if you are more growth minded and want to scale your firm.
Yeah. And it's a really nice niche because I think there's so many people out there talking about design and even technology like we do. But the business side of architecture, I've always been super frustrated with. And it sounds like you kind of talk us through that journey of, you started your own practice and then you decided to kind of, pivot to this. What made you make that transition from running your own practice to then you kind of push more towards like sales and marketing would be, the term, right?
Yeah. It was the same frustration that you're talking about, actually, right? It's that's always how it begins. I had pretty much burnt out, I think, on myself from running my own design studio over there, and it wasn't as fulfilling as I wanted it to be. I was actually in a position maybe a little bit different than some other architects. Like, obviously, you want to be doing more designing. But I actually enjoy like the business functions of it, trying to go out and network and find other work and the business development side of it. Like I did enjoy that. I wanted to have more time to do that and mix that in with a little bit of design. And then I just never wanted to touch another CD set again in my life. But I realized I didn't really have the skills for it. Like I thought I was, maybe okay at network, or like I guess I would say that at the time I thought I was good at communicating with people.
Right.
And communicating and connecting with people. Like I feel like that's always been a strong skill of mine, like something that just came kind of naturally where I can connect with people. And so that made it easier to have these conversations. Didn't necessarily mean I was good at it though. So it was just an itch that I had to scratch. And so I ended up reaching out to Monograph, and I was one of their first, I was their first sales development hire at Monograph. And that was great. So that was almost 4 years ago now, and getting to work through there. And so, when you work formally in a sales role, you actually learn how to sell properly. Yeah. You learn about what the sales processes are. You learn about how to systematize different things. You learn about what things matter, what things don't. You encounter, 75 objections every single conversation, and you learn how to overcome them, and if they really matter, if they don't matter, or how they actually matter, what they actually mean. And so running through that, it was only a couple of months into doing that when I realized, whoa, I didn't know anything about sales when I was running my own design studio. Maybe I'm not the only architect or designer that had that challenge or realization. And so I just started writing basically about things that I was finding to work well and things that I was learning on the sales side, but I positioned it as being like for architects. This is what I would do differently, now if I was having those conversations. And it just started to grow kind of from there pretty rapidly. And maybe like half a year later, I started the newsletter. And things have continued to grow since then. And then I was able to move into different roles at Monograph as well. I moved, up into sales and then over into marketing and then back into sales. And so jumped around a lot of different ways, but basically just got the professional experience in sales and marketing combined with the industry knowledge of working in architecture. And that's what I'm constantly trying to kind of skirt, is that line between, let's say, tech companies that have much better sales and marketing strategies and systems in place, and architects that don't really like to think about those things or think about them very differently. But they do want, better work and higher quality clients and more revenue for their business. It's just not necessarily a top priority.
Yeah, I think, I've also run my own little practice on the side, and it was also at the same time I was starting ATN, and I always referred to ATN as the kind of business sort of an idiot. because like you sell a product, you build a brand around it, you market it, and the more you market it, the more the business grows. Essentially, it's fairly straightforward. Mm-hmm. For the architecture practice side, I don't know why I felt it was a much more complicated sell or process, because you're trying to do a few things at the same time. You're trying to, create a portfolio. So you start doing competitions, and that starts to develop your design skills and your language. And you start to promote your projects. And in the post, I was really interested to kind of go through some of the points. I was kind of like, well, we got some products. We've got some, we've been on Design Boom and Arc Daily and some things, and like, let the clients roll in.
Yeah.
it didn't exactly work out like that.
Yeah.
And again, a bit like yourself now on the startup side, you realize there's like strategies, SEO, keyword stuff, and that you can utilize. So I thought, what could be quite interesting. I really like this post that you had of the 9 most controversial takes on the business of architecture.
Yeah.
And I think the first point is really nice. The build it and they will come era is over, which I went through, and definitely a lot of other architects went through. And you kind of explained like a website and just having Instagram isn't enough anymore. So maybe an interesting place to start is, where would you start now? If you are an architect, a young architect that wants to go and promote themselves, you're setting up your website, you're setting up your social media, what is the best way to get that ball rolling?
Yeah, that's a great question. The build it and they will come era is amazing whenever it's there. But the bad part of it is that when it's gone, you have a bunch of people that thought they were really good at driving business, driving clients to their business, only to find that they actually didn't develop those skills because they were coming. they were arriving at the door. So I position everything at this point around value, right? Value that you are providing to your audience. That's the best way to get in front of them, especially for something that we would consider to be like a high cost, high value, whatever you want to call it, a high value service, which is architects, right? It's not low value. We're not talking about hundreds of dollars or even thousands, but it's usually tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so the best way to prove your worth and value is to share it with your ideal clients. And that's a big difference. So you had talked about, featured on Arc Daily, featured on Design Boom, waiting for things to come in. I have so many people that, almost, I think every single architect goes through that same thought process, right?
Yeah.
But then, they're kind of flabbergasted when they don't get any work from it. And the reason for that is that who's the audience for Arc Daily and Design Boom? It's other architects. So other architects aren't going to hire you. Might be good as a recruiting tool, possibly, but they're not going to hire you through that. So your audience is probably not seeing any of that amazing work that you're doing. I actually have close friends of mine that are amazing architects, and they recently went a little bit viral. Like they were featured in Dezeen and all of these in Arc Daily and these different areas. And I was chatting with them recently, and I was like, anything come of that out of curiosity? No, nothing. Not just crickets, right? Crickets from that. And I think that's true. So, you want to optimize your energy towards where your ideal clients are actually at. And then once you identify where they're at, you want to share value with them, which is things that are important to them, not necessarily things that are important to you as an architect, because they think differently. So that's the amazing thing about social media, though, and the internet, right? Is that at least on the social media side, you can have 0 followers and you can grow that. You can still get impressions in front of people that are your ideal audience just simply by writing or speaking specifically to them. So I would personally start on social media. I'd pick a channel. I think LinkedIn is one of the better ones because you're actually going to get in front of the decision makers. I think Instagram is really great for dopamine hits if you prefer those, right? But you can have tens of thousands of followers on Instagram, but the chance of them being potential clients or leads is pretty low. But that's kind of on the opposite side on LinkedIn. Like you'll get less engagement, but the engagement that you do get will be much higher quality. If that's what you're targeting. So I would do that. And I would speak specifically about how you solve their challenges or the challenges that they think that they might have. Or the challenges that they have today or tomorrow or whatever those things are. You want to talk about how you can solve them and how you've solved them for other people. So it's not that you're not talking about your firm or your work, you are. It's just the frame of that needs to shift to always be about how it's benefiting the client, not how you won an award for it, right? And how you all are geniuses for coming up with this amazing design concept that only another architect will understand, but the clients won't.
Yeah, it sounds so obvious when you say it, but I totally got into that trap myself, because you're kind of like, well, let's create some cool projects, let's go and publish them, and hopefully some people will see it. But yeah, you're publishing it on places that are mostly full of your colleagues.
That's right. Yeah. And it actually reminds me of that first, like you mentioned, Studio Bucky. So Alexander Buckridge, who is a mutual friend of ours, the first season of the Growthitect podcast that I did with him was just essentially recorded consultations with him, like help as he was launching his firm, Studio Bucky. And there's discussions, it must be somewhere in the middle of the season. I don't remember exactly what episode it was, but where there's a discussion about the portfolio, right? And what kind of work needs to be shown there. By the end of the season, you actually are able to walk through this process of helping Alex like win his first client, right? Yeah. But he does it with basically just a single page website that doesn't actually show any of, like there's no portfolio. There's no projects. He's got a great brand and vibe that he's put out together. And he didn't have a portfolio of projects, even though he has one. He has plenty that he's worked on, so he can speak to the experience, which is important. But like to start your firm or to win your first several clients, like you don't need a giant portfolio. You don't need work or proof points. You just need to be able to speak to your ability to solve the challenges and get the clients the goal that they're looking for at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually remember looking at his website, and it was different to what a typical, a new architecture studio would look like. It's kind of like a step-by-step process of what are the benefits of working with Bucky, and
right.
So I think it's also a really interesting side. Again, you see it way more in the startup space. Here's my product. I think when you think of it more like you're selling a product, it's more straightforward. Architecture is obviously a service, but you could kind of think of it as a product, right? That this is what it does, this is the benefits, and this is where you can get it, and this is how much it costs.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the benefits, it's the outcomes that clients want to know about. They want to understand the process a little bit, but what they don't need is the features, right? And architects will like 95% talk about the features if we're still using this like product analogy, right? So if we're talking about like a laptop, right? And it's like, oh, this has 32 gigabytes of RAM and all these different things like that. Those are features, and the only people that are going to understand that are other people that appreciate computers, not necessarily the person that's buying it. They just need you to tell them, yes, you can have all of your applications open at once, and it's not going to slow down your computer. Okay. That sounds great. Like, I don't get that out of 32 gigabytes of RAM, but I do understand the benefit that you just described there. And so that's the same way that you want to talk about your work, right? It doesn't matter, like schematic design or design development or construction documentation, like that's not what matters. Like we do construction documents. Cool. What does that actually mean, right? We're able to put together the instructions for the general contractors so that you get the outcome that we worked together to produce, right? It's like they want to know what that benefit is, not necessarily like just the name or the feature of it.
Yeah. I think maybe to kind of roll on from this and also pick, I'm sort of like pick and mixing some of these points, but one of the other points which I thought was really interesting was, you got a few actually on social media. and the importance of social media. And again, I think there's been something recently that's been quite interesting with AI that has, a lot of people's like, oh, how is AI disrupting the design process and architecture and stuff like that? Have we seen it really disrupt the design process? Not as much as we thought, right? Yes, we can design a lot of things. We can design a lot of images quickly. But then, the design process kind of goes back to what it's been. We use these plugins for different things. But where I have seen it like actually disrupt the industry is in marketing. Mm-hmm. And what I've seen is now that kind of portfolio, you're saying you don't necessarily need a portfolio, but you're able to generate ideas and get across your philosophy, right? And your direction. Like, let's say you're into high-end luxury hotels. You can create a ton of content that you can craft and put it out there very quickly and feed these really hungry algorithms of Instagram. It's more short form content. So Instagram, TikTok, maybe LinkedIn, that kind of stuff. And it's enabled a few people to go from, like mid-level architects to starting their own firm.
Yeah.
Have you seen this? Do you think that's true, that, technology, AI has enabled architects to kind of speed up that process of marketing themselves?
Definitely. Although I've only seen it exist on two very opposite spectrums, right? It's like so obviously AI generated that it loses all authenticity. And it actually, it kind of like, let's say it like decreases brand value and reputation. Or it's executed, like if you already have the skills and the systems in place, then yeah, it absolutely helps you to kind of pour gasoline on that fire. There doesn't seem to be anything in between, because all of the AI, in my opinion, is still like, it's still the garbage in, garbage out situation, or maybe it's garbage in and like less garbagey stuff out, like it gets a little bit better. So I kind of think about it as it's like, I'm not sure what your academic experience was like, but I remember for mine, right, when I did jump into my first studio, I had done some like drawing and drafting classes before then, right? And then when we got into the design studio, the professor was like, I don't care what you do. I don't care if you want to hand draft. I don't care if you want to use Rhino. It doesn't matter to me what it is. Like, I just want to, like, however you want to present your ideas is fine. But I think it holds true that if you don't have the foundations in place, like being able to do, if you don't go through the process of like learning maybe how to hand draft, right, first, and then you jump immediately into using something like Rhino, you're going to be very lost, right? If you don't know how to do it the manual way first. And I think that we see the same thing happen a lot with like the AI tools. Like if you don't understand the best way to, market effectively or format a post or do copywriting, like the outcome isn't going to be great. But if you take the time to also learn those things and improve those skills for yourself, then not only does your ability to measure that get better, but the outcomes, like what you're putting into it and how you're prompting it to do that, to do those things for you, also becomes significantly better. So there's still the manual touch. If you can get better and refine that, then yeah, the results I think are incredible if you can do that well.
Yeah, I think, and maybe also touches on another point is, I think a lot of people I'm watching a few people that are starting their firms right now. They have different scales. Some already have a few big projects. Some are really just starting, but they all seem to be kind of very focused on social media growth, as though that's the kind of answer to bringing in more projects, bringing in more exposure, which I can kind of see it is. But at the same time, I kind of see this feedback loop of, well, this reel didn't do very well. And the design starts to get influenced by how the algorithm is performing, if you see what I mean. And so I was kind of, trying to think through this loop of, starting your own firm, you need to market. We're going to focus on social media. And then your design starts to cater for social media, which means it becomes more and more expressive, complicated, maybe pulled away from reality and the benefits that you might, are kind of talking about that the actual developer or client would have, like cost, buildability, all these kind of stuff. What's your thoughts on that? Like this, I know one of the other points is short form versus long form social media. But do you think there's a danger that, starting a practice today, you're just kind of chasing that engagement?
I think that's a mistake. Yeah. Like it depends on what you're optimizing for. Like, yeah, if you are using social media to optimize for followers, then absolutely, that's a mistake. And I think that's going to have a negative impact on your practice. Yeah. Followers are good, but it's not the main thing that you should be optimizing for. I know plenty of firms with tens of thousands of followers on Instagram that get absolutely zero leads on a regular basis, like from their Instagram account, right? And so that's a great example. Like, I question, what is the value of having all of those followers if it's not helping you to improve your business in any measurable way, right? Or drive your business forward. So I would rather take the firm that has 1,000 followers and is able to generate 3 or 4 leads a month, from their Instagram, over the one that has 30,000 followers, gets, 1,000 likes on every single post, but actually doesn't generate any real business out of it.
Yeah. Because I think in order to grow to a certain size, you have to cater to like a much broader audience. And I think then you have a group of general followers rather than specific and niche followers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And I think that's the importance of like speaking directly to your audience. And a good example, like when I started Growthitect, I actually thought that my audience was architects. Just generally, like just writing to architects. And as I've done it more, I've realized, no, my audience isn't really architects. My audience is more so firm owners and firm leaders. Like I'm speaking pretty much directly to the decision makers. Right. So most of my content isn't actually that relevant to at least architects that either aren't in a leadership position or don't have any interest in like, the business side of architecture. But for leaders and firm owners that are, it's more interesting. So I've actually gotten I already felt a little worried because I was like, architects, like there's not that many architects. Like that feels a little too niche. And I've niched it down even more to say, firm owners and firm leaders, because it helps me be more targeted with my content, with the value that I'm sharing. And it also brings the right people to my business, right? Which is other firm owners and leaders. Like there's theoretically not, like from a business standpoint, at least in terms of short-term value, there's not a ton of value that I get from like a student coming to follow me or joining Growthitect, because I know like I actually don't have something that I can provide. I mean, they can learn for free from the newsletter, which they should, but they're not going to become like a client of mine anytime soon, probably. And so it's kind of the same thing on Instagram, right? If you're targeting the wrong people, to your point, if you're doing it for a broad audience, and you end up with this audience that's 99%, they just like looking at pictures of architecture, and maybe only 1% could ever like fall into your ideal client profile. I mean, you have something that you can work with, but you might have wasted 99% of your energy on growing like on speaking to the wrong people.
Yeah. So I guess the $1 million question is, most architects are looking for developers because they're the ones that commission buildings. Where do we find developers? Because I think, part of, and again, going back to like what I'm doing now and Facet and stuff like that, it really feels like you got to juggle this world of online, but also in-person networking. Like I just saw, I think it was last month or earlier this month, everyone was at MIPIM. I really want to go to MIPIM now. I'm like, what goes on there? Is this where all the deals happening? It's just like
this is where I find my revenue. Yeah, it's there.
Yeah, you just they hoard all the developers into one room, and then just all the biz dev guys attack them from. But yeah, where can you connect with developers that wanting to build and looking for architects? That's always one I've found hard to answer.
I mean, I think there's two ways to do it. None of them are. It's kind of funny because the answers probably aren't what people want to hear. Like there's not like a silver bullet in terms of where to find them. I would literally be searching for developers on Google in my local area and starting to gather where they are, doing research on them, trying to figure out if they work with architects today or what architects they work with. And I do the same thing on LinkedIn, trying to find other developers in my area that I can do. And then I would slowly start connecting with them, right? That's the nice thing about like on LinkedIn, you get, I think it's 200 connection requests that you can make a week, which is a lot, by the way. Yeah. If you actually exercise that and you are targeted with that approach, right? That is that's 10,400 connection requests a year. Normal connection request acceptance rate. We're going to get crazy here, but like this is what's literally sitting right in front of you for free. That's 10,400 connection requests a year. On average, the average acceptance rate of a connection request on LinkedIn that don't include a note is 50%. So every single year, you can generate an additional 50 to 100 connections with your ideal audience just by exercising your free right to do 200 connection requests a week. Right. So like that alone, like you're growing your network. And then what's happening? If you're posting content that's helpful and valuable to developers, how you're working alongside developers, how you're helping them, get a better ROI out of their investments, how you're helping them, create more sustainable buildings, like whatever that thing is that they're looking to do. If you're actually sharing value to that, then they're going to see it because now they're connected with you. And so there's that way. And then the Google way is literally, I'm going to do that. I'm going to look into who the business owners are, who the decision makers are. And I'm either going to call them up or I'm going to show up at their place and have a conversation about like, hey, I just started a firm down here. I've seen some of your work around town. It looks like it's amazing. Just curious if I can ask you a few questions if you have some time. Right. And it's like, how, what architects are you working with today? Cool. How has your experience been with them? Where do you see the most room for improvement in that experience? Right. So you want to get an understanding of kind of where the gaps in the market are at. And if there's challenges that you can solve for them, maybe you find out that they've been using an architect, but they don't enjoy the architect that they've been working with because everything's delayed. Everything seems like it's going over budget, right? And if that becomes a common theme with a lot of the developers that you end up speaking with, then you realize, okay, well, your differentiation in the market is being able to deliver projects on time and on budget. If you can do that well, then you have a leg up from the rest of the competition and the rest of the market. So it requires you can't do it passively. So it definitely requires taking action and having conversations with people. But that's kind of the way I would do it first is I would basically do research, right? You have to research and go out and have conversations with people in your market. And you have to do it in a way where you're actually learning things about how you can best position yourself and the problems that your clients, which in this case, we're talking about developers, are having with their current service providers, with their current architects, to understand where you can fit in the best.
Yeah, it's so underrated doing that, going and LinkedIn, I have to say, is one of the most incredible platforms for me.
It's amazing.
Literally a message, a connection, and you're talking to some CEO about, some collaboration. It's literally that simple at some point. And
it is.
I think there is a snowball effect. Like the more they see you online and then you're connected and then you post something and they're like, oh, I'm reminded about, we have got a project that would really fit this. Could we talk? It's like you said, it's not passive. It's like, and there was a period at facet, for example, I was just pestering VCs or pestering developers, and you're just on LinkedIn
the whole day.
For the whole day, yeah. But that to me has been one of the most fruitful ways to find clients, collaborators, investors, whatever it is you're kind of looking for.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's hard to say all, but off the top of my head, let's just say 90% plus of the best relationships that I have now relative to Growthitect in my business came from LinkedIn. Came from posting content or someone reaching out to me or someone saying, hey, let's connect and let's jump on a call or do these different things. And so it's incredible. It's an incredible tool. And honestly, if it's worth the extra $1,000 to get the Sales Navigator too, if people don't have it, because I think it's $1,000 a year, but your ability to be even more targeted with who it is that you want to connect with on a regular basis and kind of track their performance is well worth it, right? When you think about, it costing $1,000, but if it helps you get, one client a year, you're going to get a huge ROI in that. So things like that, I think, can make a big difference too.
Yeah. So if there's any architects listening in, do the Instagram thing, but LinkedIn is where shit goes down.
LinkedIn's where it's at. No matter where you post, actually, I'll tell you the kind of secret here. No matter where you post, this is a huge thing that most architects leave out. So we already talked about how you need to talk about, you actually need to share value, right? So that's different than, and I'm not saying you can't share your work. You should share like images of your work because that is what ultimately gets their attention. But you have to be able to speak about it, right? Write about it, copyright about it in a way that kind of pushes them from being, let's say, just a follower to being a lead. Like you want to move them further down or further through that conversion engine. And so that comes through, you can talk about a project and share it, but talk about the challenge that you helped the client overcome. Or when they came to us, they weren't able to fit into their small office, but, we worked together to find unique ways of giving them more space without giving them more square footage, right? And as a result, they got these things. And so you're walking them through that. But then there's this really important thing that you can't forget to do at the end of your posts, which is simply to say how people can take the next step to work with you, right? There's usually this like abrupt ending at the end of the post. And it's just like, cool, well, there's your value for you. But you need to tell people what that next step is, and you need to make that next step easy. So the next step shouldn't be, if you're interested, go check out our website, right? Because that's relying on them to go to your company page to find out what your website is, to go to your website to find your contact page, to fill out the form, and to hopefully like get an email reply, right? That's too many steps versus just something like, if you're looking to overcome a similar challenge, shoot me a DM, shoot me a direct message. I'd love to help, right? It's like simple, like no friction to that. Like anyone can do that. And you can even be more specific about the type of work that you're looking to do, right? Like you can add some scarcity and urgency to it and say, if you're looking to do something similar, we have 3 openings for clients in June. So if you're interested, I'm happy to chat, right? Like just being clear about what your availability is. Like it's not bad that you have availability. That's a good thing. But being like, how much availability do you have? Because then people will actually want to fill one of those spots if they're thinking about it. Like they have an urge they're more motivated to start that conversation with you.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on, again, going back to one of your other points, short form versus long form? Now, one thing I've always been kind of pushing other architects to do is to get into YouTube, because I think it's like massively underrated. I always bring up the example. There's a really famous YouTuber here in the UK, and he runs a business he basically does gravel and groundworks. Like it's literally dirt. He has like 300, he's got a lot of followers, and it's just like a vlog of the business. And there's one thing that I've never experienced, I've always experienced as an architect, is you say you're an architect and people go, that's super cool. Like, there's something intrinsically interesting about designing buildings, right? Yet I don't see that many people talking about design on YouTube. There's lots of, like us, ArchiTech Network, we have a niche, but I haven't really seen many design firms use it as a way to sell, like you said, their pros and benefits to developers. Are you seeing that? What's your view on the world of YouTube and longer format?
Well, I mean, probably Eric Reinhold, right, from 30 by 40 Workshop is like the king of it, right?
Yeah.
And what did he do? He kind of lifted that veil that you're talking about, removed the curtain of what's it actually like to be an architect. What's that process look like? And obviously that's great content for other architects too, which I think is what he ultimately ends up like marketing to. But there's people that want to understand how things come together, right? And they'll absolutely engage with that. I think, what's the name? Olsen Kundig. I think they have a really good YouTube channel as well, or they have good YouTube videos. Right. I forget which one it is, but where they're walking through the spaces and maybe the architect is giving the tour. Like there's different ways to do that. If I were going to do it, if I were going to start a YouTube video today, I would be in the dirt to what you're talking about. It'd be every project would kind of generate its own video, and it would take you from like we'd get glimpses of the first concept design through to like having design meetings and having stakeholder meetings through to the site visits and watching things come together. Right. And just kind of like filling in those pieces that you're talking about and how does this actually work? And even more like bonus points if you're doing it to, if you can focus that content on specific wants or desires or challenges that your clients typically have. Right. Like if they like to have balconies, right? But most balconies are only, 4 feet deep, and you figured out a way to do it effectively at 6 feet deep or something. And here's how you're doing it. Yeah, I think long form content is great because what it does is it helps build trust, right? The short form content, it can also do that. But ultimately, if people don't, let's say, hear you speak or see you speak or see you in person or see your face, it's really tough to build that trust with someone. But the more that they do see you and the more that you, like as your voice or your face is giving them value, the more that they're going to trust you and the easier it's going to be to build that relationship. And ultimately, when they do, become an opportunity, the easier it's going to be to win them because you already have that built-in trust with them.
Yeah. I think this is maybe a bit of a controversial example, but since you're American and I lived in America for a number of years, over COVID, I got into Barstool Sports, and it's maybe an extreme example for the audience, but like they're a company that literally record confrontations in the office. Like basically everything that's going on in the office is up for grabs content-wise. Yeah. I'm not suggesting this, but something in that mix where you have a more polished video about the product, but then you also have something that's like the design process behind the scenes. I haven't seen many people try this yet.
Yeah. Well, it can't be, to your point, it can't be too refined, right? Yeah. It needs to feel real, right? Like and I hate that this is the first example that came to my mind because it shouldn't be, but like HGTV, right? Which has absolutely just demolished the value of architects, unfortunately, because people think that they can do it by themselves. But But what happens when you're watching like one of those HGTV shows and they're building a new home, right? And there's always this moment where it goes on, where right before it goes on commercial break, right? There's like what do you mean that's not in stock? Like there's that moment and then boom, like commercial break, right? Like it holds your attention and it pulls you in so that you're going to stay through the end of the commercial and see like what the challenge is that someone overcame. And it feels more real that way. Like it can't always be perfect. You can't always have wins along the way. And so sharing, the realities and things that go wrong and how you overcome them, I think is good too. It adds that authenticity to it.
Yeah. No, I think I'm really curious to see someone try it and pull it off. I haven't seen it that yet.
Yeah.
But
it takes so much work, probably. That's probably why it's hard. As you know way more than I do. I mean, the videos that you're doing here are incredible. And those walkthroughs, the production level is insane. So that's I'm guessing that's maybe the barrier to entry. But for any architect listening, you can literally just use your iPhone if you want.
Yeah.
Just use your iPhone and start small. It doesn't have to be Ollie level every single time.
Yeah. I mean, the tours. Yeah, we got a guy.
Yeah,
it's like high production, and to be fair, it would be a lot of work. But you could have someone quite young that's wanting to get a bit of experience, and they're sort of the content creator as well. I think there's loads of people looking for those kind of roles. But yeah, I'm really curious to see this. We won't go through all the points I'll put in the link below your 9 most controversial takes on the business of architecture, but maybe just to touch on 1 or 2 more before we go on to kind of maybe some broader topics on the business side of architecture. But I think there's a couple that stood out. Like, one, the best architects aren't always the ones winning projects. I think that's a really interesting one to unpick, which also kind of builds into that firms that build trust online are growing faster than firms that solely rely on referrals. Maybe unpick this a little bit, like, why are the best architects not always winning, and how do you kind of build that online trust? That is kind of a trickier one.
Yeah. Remind me the second half of the not the best architects win projects. Well, what did I say there exactly? Where is that gone? The ones that focus on selling and marketing win. If you're frustrated that worse architects are getting work, it's because they're better and understand the needs and wants of the client. Yeah. Okay. I wanted to make sure that I that it was what I thought it was. So I think there's this. I think it comes up through architecture school, I would imagine, right? But you're surrounded by so much amazing talent in architecture school that naturally the talent that stands out is the design talent, right? That's what ends up winning the awards and getting the most attention in different ways. And so you assume that design talent is then going to go on and produce probably the best architecture business. And I have personally not seen or found that to be true. Obviously, it does happen sometimes, which is how starchitects are probably born. But usually, the people winning the work aren't necessarily what architects would consider to be the best architect, right? Yeah. And so it's so often that I'm speaking with an architect that's frustrated that they're losing their work to like Joe Schmo down the road that just does like basic design, right? And how do the clients not see that there's a huge difference there? Well, they don't see it because they didn't go to school for 8 years and spend 15 years of their life like focused on these things like we did. Because the only thing that the client sees is that there's one architect that's speaking about how they're going to solve their problems and help them reach their goals. And there's another architect that's just talking about how they're good at designing. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so that's why that's happening. So that's why I mean the most successful businesses of architecture are ones that understand sales and marketing. And I'm not saying to do so in like an unethical way. I want to be very clear about that, right? Like, I'm not saying like go out and like persuasively sell people that don't need your services. Like, I'm very against that. I actually think, good selling is about solving the problems that your clients have. And good selling is about making sure that you are absolutely, bar none, confidently the best solution for that client and that opportunity that's walking in the door, right? And you do that from deeply understanding what their situation and problems are and what they actually want to get out of it, so that you can go back and say, okay, hey, is this something that we do very well? Is this something that we do better than anyone else? Yes, it is. Okay, now I can confidently go into this next conversation and make sure that we're positioning ourselves and our value to show them how not only are we the best, option for them. We are literally the only option for them if this is the outcome that they're looking to get.
Yeah. Do you think there's I would find there's always a bit of a danger with architects that you sell their design, right? And I think those are podcasts with Alex where you say design is not your USP. Yeah. And actually, is it sometimes things like cost, constructability? Because I think developers are a little bit frustrated as us as architects. We'll over design it. Here's your house that's going to be £1 million, and then you go to a contractor and it's like 3 million quid, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Do you think it's sometimes that less like sexy side that we should really be kind of pushing a little bit more?
I think there's always competing priorities with architects, right? So you have the priorities of the client, and then you have the priorities of your vision. And this is just what happens because it's a creative discipline, right? And this is the same in any other creative discipline as well, whether we're talking about something closer like interior design, or if we're talking about like, brand packages or graphic design. And it's the same thing that happens all the way down. No matter what, if you're bringing in another stakeholder, right, they're going to have opinions that are likely going to be different than yours. And so it's not necessarily that we need to prioritize the less sexy things more. It's just that we need to learn how to talk about them properly. Right. So like talking about things like, a developer's return on investment doesn't necessarily have to change or negatively impact your design intents, right? Yeah. If you can show a design, but then speak to why this is going to be beneficial to a developer because it's going to help increase the end value, right? And they're going to be able to get more return on that investment that they're putting into it, then they do not care about that design. You can do literally whatever you want, right? Yeah. Because you're focused and positioning in a creative way a solution that's benefiting their end goal. And so I think it's around that. It's really around the way that it positions it. It's not, I think right now it's very often that you see these two things at odds, right? Like what the client's vision is versus what your vision is. And I think that's because that's the easiest approach to make, right? Oh, clients don't understand design, so, they just don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. When in reality, the better solution and the much more difficult one, much more challenging one, but ultimately will work out to better outcomes, is by aligning that, right? And saying, okay, we just need to be more creative with the solutions that we are coming up with and the designs that we are making, so that not only it doesn't meet the standard of the client, but it exceeds it. And we are also very pleased with that outcome as well.
Yeah, I think another one that I've brought up a number of times in podcasts and some other places is, as an example, I think when Big got started, they actually made a name for themselves because the client was getting like a Starchitect's looking building, but not necessarily a Starchitect's price. People really don't understand this, and they think that, these well-known architects just meet these developers that just want to build expensive buildings. It wasn't the case. And actually, the VM house, which was one of the early products in Copenhagen, there's loads of features in that where, for example, all the apartments were duplexes, which is great from a design perspective. You get these beautiful double height spaces, but actually from a developer, what it meant was they designed it, which means that they only had a corridor of access every 2 floors, which means the developer is paying 50% less for wasted space that is not sellable area. Yeah. And, that to me, I think is an example of what you're talking about. And it's also an example that people don't always understand about some of these, well-known firms like Big, is they kind of started by doing exactly what you're saying. It's design and, business logic for the developer as well.
Yeah, you have to think like your client. And then if you don't want to think like your client, then please become a developer, because we need more architects as developers for sure.
Which might actually be a great, like, as we're coming towards the end of the podcast, I think that might be a good question. What I wanted to ask you was, are you worried about the business of architecture practice? Are we a dying business? Because I look around, I see, fees are getting squeezed. We're getting paid less and less. We're working more. AI is on the horizon, and not that I feel like AI is going to take over our jobs, but it could reduce the amount of architects that are needed. Are you worried about the business side of architecture? Do we need to diversify and become developers or something like that?
Not necessarily. I mean, I would love that to happen. I think that they should. I think it depends on how you are going to approach the change that is imminently coming, right? Like, there's no doubt that AI is coming to disrupt not just our industry, but literally every single industry, right? Yeah. And it's going to change. The question is whether, like, I am very worried for the industry if architects are going to push it away, right? And say, no, I don't want AI to take my job. Go over there and stay away, which I think what that's going to lead to is then non-architects figuring out how to architect solutions, right? Yeah. And that's going to be a poor outcome, not just for the profession, but also for the built environment. Versus if architects choose to embrace it, right, as a new way forward, and you put yourselves at the forefront of the changes and the decisions that are happening around AI, then we're in a much better position, right? Because it's not going to replace your jobs if you're the ones that know how to use it effectively, right? And if you're the ones that are driving that change. And so I think, like, I definitely firmly believe that it needs to be embraced, because if it's not, then it will like, someone's going to do it. Someone is going to create like an AI architecture firm. And I hope that it's an architect and not a non-architect, right? Not just like some developer that came in and paid someone for the solution because no architect wanted to do it. So I think it needs to be embraced, but it shouldn't be something like, I actually don't think it, as long as we embrace it, I don't think it decreases the value of architects. I think it only adds to it. I think it puts you at the forefront of it. I think it helps you, speak better and relate better to your clients, give them better outcomes, give them faster outcomes, and produce a better built environment for everyone. As long as architects that are trained and educated and thoughtful around these things are the ones that are actually leading the way. Yeah.
So adopt or die, essentially.
Yeah, I think so.
Also, like a follow-up question on the kind of, do you think that this world of being online now, most architects, right, are based in major cities? I'm here in London, I've worked in New York, Hong Kong. These are very expensive cities to live in. And frankly, architect salaries have not caught up with this. And the reason they've always been in major cities is for, interaction with developers and investors and various other professionals, right? Do you think this world of online and online marketing and all this kind of stuff, do we need to be in major cities? Do you think we can, practices that are maybe in more remote locations where we can have a better work-life balance can kind of survive?
Absolutely. And I think I would imagine that's what's coming. Yeah. Like, I think that's what the new generation of architects wants. And I think that's what they're probably going to end up building. And I don't think that clients care where the team is at, or if they're distributed, or if they're right down the road. As long as they have an easy way to communicate effectively, right? That's the most important thing. As long as things are still communicated effectively, I don't think anyone cares how it's getting done. Like, it doesn't, like, they don't care if you have an office in New York, or if you're spread throughout the country with a remote team. I obviously am a huge proponent of remote work. That's what I've been doing for the past 4, 5, 6 years. Working remotely, and I think it has so many benefits. It definitely has challenges, but it's just different challenges than what you have in the office, right? I mean, by far the biggest challenge is getting that communication right in order. You have to make sure that you can communicate effectively. You have to make sure that your remote team doesn't feel lonely, and that there's still ways to connect with one another in different ways, which you can do through offsites, or you can do through, jumping on Zooms, being on a Zoom call, being on a video call like you and I are right now is always going to be one step less in some way than being in person. And I think that has to be accepted for the fact that there's other benefits that come from being able to have a remote and distributed team, which is basically finding the best talent for your business. It's not limited to a specific region anymore, and they can work from anywhere. And then I think what also happens on the other end, as long as you build the right culture and do so effectively, is that you get better work, because people are healthier and happier, and they're going to stay longer, and they want to be part of building that culture and building the business with you. And so I think that you can do that really effectively in a remote firm. And I really look forward to the first, let's say, kind of globally distributed architecture firm that's doing work around the world.
Yeah. I'm not, I think you can do the remote thing. I kind of like the idea of something in between where, in that kind of crunch weeks, you meet up somewhere for a month or two or go back to it. But it does feel like this has to change, and this has to be the future, right? This kind of distributed network of
it could be like pods too in different areas. Like maybe there's 3 to 5 people in smaller cities. I mean, I live in Charlotte in North Carolina, and it's not too, it's growing quickly, but it's not too big yet or anything like that. And I think there's value in areas like that, or just in rural areas. Why not? We've got to spread out a little bit. I'm not a city person myself in terms of where I prefer to live. I've tried living in one, and it wasn't for me.
I mean, I'm a country boy at heart, but I'm definitely a city guy at the moment. But I could definitely see a future where it's kind of a mixed one. I think, well, it's been great having you on. I think let's recap. If young architects are out there, you want to start a new architecture practice, you got to play the world of being online, setting up that social media, having targeted marketing. But you've also got to span that world of networking, literally knocking on people's doors or virtually knocking on people's doors on LinkedIn or conferences, events. We didn't even touch on that actually, but that can be a great place as well, right? And check out the Growthitect and maybe explain where people can find you and sign up to your newsletter and reach out to you if they want to get some advice.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we can put a link below. But if you subscribe, I'll send all of the ATN ecosystem here. You'll get the top 5 growth hacks for the year, which kind of span sales and marketing and social media strategies, so that you can start implementing those soon. Because I'm very focused to make sure that when I send something, there's actually actionable steps that people can take to execute on the thing, rather than just sharing an idea with you. So that's something that's definitely important to me. So yeah, would love to bring you aboard. And you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn or via email as well. And if any of you are going to do any of the things that Ollie and I have chatted about here, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out. If you're doing them, please tell us. We want to support you.
Yeah, that's exactly why I wanted to have you on today, because I think I love talking about this side of things. I'm also still learning this side of stuff. And I think there's so many architects out there that probably tried to start a practice, got frustrated, and not really even kind of looked at this space. So hopefully, if you listen to this and, something happens because of it, that's why we do it. We'd love to know.
That's right. Yeah. Awesome.
I'll put all your links in the description below. But Tyler, thank you so much for coming on. I don't know if you've got anything else on the horizon you want to promote, but feel free to do it. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming on today.
No, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I love having these conversations. Let's do it again sometime.
And you're setting a record here. I didn't mention it at the beginning, but you're the first podcast in our new studio with our new wall in the background here that we built. So you're setting the tone for this new backdrop of this new era of the podcast. So.
Awesome. I wanted to compliment you on it. I can only see like variations of it, but I love whatever it is. So cool. I'm excited to be the first one.
Yeah. Well, I'll do a video about it soon and in the intro, but this is an artist that we worked with. So you'll see there's loads of like well-known architects, and we used to have these big posters in the background, and now I thought, we need to diversify, and we got all different kinds of architects.
You know what it reminds me of immediately was, and I don't know, I guess I haven't checked lately to see if it's still the same, but it reminds me of Big's website.
Yeah.
In the background. Yeah.
We like to add a flavor of where we came from.
Yeah. Just a little bit. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, Tyler, thank you so much. And guys, we'll be back with our 60th podcast, which is going to be a milestone. And it looks like we're going to get Patrick Schumacher on from Zaha Hadid to talk about parametrics and, AI and the metaverse and who knows what else. So it should be a good one.
Amazing.
All right, Tyler, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys in the next podcast.
Thanks.